What if the kid everyone laughed at for being broke became a man? They all begged for a seat at his table. The lights of the school gym flickered like dying stars. The walls, lined with faded banners of past victories, felt colder than usual. In the middle of the court, his knees scraped against the hardwood, his backpack flung open, its contents scattered. Laughter echoed, not the innocent kind, but sharp, stabbing, cruel. "Pick it up, Deshaun," a senior taunted, stepping on a spiral notebook, grinding it into the dust. "Or is this too rich for you?" More laughter. A math textbook lay open on the floor, face down in humiliation like its owner. Deshaun's hands trembled as he reached for it. He could feel their eyes digging into him, but he refused to look up, because if he did, they'd see it. The fury behind the silence. The fire building in the place where most kids carried fear. But for now, he remained quiet. Because broke kids didn't get to speak. Because black boys from public housing didn't get to fight back. Not if they wanted to make it out alive. And Deshaun A. Rivers had made a silent vow to himself long ago. He was going to make it out. By age 10, Deshaun had already learned how to stretch a dollar like elastic. His mother, Gloria, worked 3 jobs and came home with stories under her eyes and arthritis in her bones. Their apartment in East Flatbush, Brooklyn, had more leaks than lights, more memories than furniture. They shared a bed, a space heater, a dream. Deshaun wasn't stupid. He saw the way the world looked at people like him, as statistics, as cautionary tales, as shadows in someone else's American dream. Teachers spoke to him like he was a charity case. Classmates avoided sitting next to him, unless it was to copy his homework. One time, a substitute asked if he could read out loud. He read better than anyone in the room. Nobody clapped. He'd wake up early just to catch the Wi-Fi from the laundromat downstairs, so he could watch videos of people making money online. Entrepreneurs, stock traders, coders. One night, he discovered a documentary on the wealth gap. That was the night he stopped dreaming about being rich. He started planning. By high school, Deshaun had learned 2 things. Betrayal often wears a friendly face, and injustice doesn't always come with handcuffs. During junior year, he finally got a shot, an internship at a local tech company, one of those rare programs for disadvantaged youth. It was supposed to be his ticket out. He poured himself into the work, showing up early, leaving late. He even designed an app prototype that tracked local community resources, shelters, food banks, tutoring services. The lead developer called it surprisingly impressive. A month later, the prototype was gone from his folder. The company released a near-identical app under their own name. He was removed from the program. No explanation. No call back. That was betrayal number 1. Betrayal number 2 came from his best friend, Tyreek, someone he thought of as a brother. They were inseparable until Tyreek started hanging with older guys from the block, flashing money and mouthing off about loyalty. One night, Tyreek slipped a burner phone into Deshaun's backpack and tipped off a cop he knew, hoping to gain favor with local dealers. Deshaun got arrested. It didn't stick, thanks to Gloria's grit and a public defender who still believed in kids like him. But the damage was done. School treated him like a criminal. His scholarship chances evaporated. The whispers didn't stop. Tyreek never apologized. Deshaun didn't retaliate. He just added another name to the list. By 19, Deshaun was working graveyard shifts at a gas station and sleeping in a friend's car. Gloria had passed from untreated heart issues, a result of misdiagnoses and missed paychecks. No family, no home, no prospects. Most nights, he scribbled notes on the back of receipts. App ideas, market trends, motivational quotes. He studied algorithms on cracked screens. Read business ebooks on stolen Wi-Fi. Some nights, he cried quietly into his jacket sleeves. Other nights, he watched expensive cars roll by, wondering what it would feel like to matter, but he never gave up. And then one night, while restocking gum and vape cartridges, he saw it. A customer paid using something called Ethereum. He asked questions, got laughed at, but that night, he went home and searched everything he could about cryptocurrency. The rabbit hole swallowed him. It wasn't about getting rich. It was about freedom. The next morning, he used his entire paycheck, $183.52. To buy Ethereum. The price dipped the next day. He didn't care. He was hooked. Deshaun spent the next 4 years in digital hibernation. No social media. No parties. No distractions. Just code, crypto, coffee, and cold ambition. He learned about smart contracts, DAOs, and DeFi. He started trading altcoins, building small automated bots to scalp profits. He failed. Often. But every failure taught him something. Eventually, he launched his own NFT project, Legacy Chain, a cultural preservation protocol that encoded the oral histories and stories of marginalized communities into the blockchain. It didn't just gain traction, it exploded. Within 18 months, it had thousands of users across 6 continents. Museums began partnering with him. Universities reached out. Investors tried to get in early. But Deshaun never forgot the names, or the laughter, or the silence of betrayal. And so he stayed in the shadows, built in silence, let the legend grow while he remained a ghost, until the day came, the day that changed everything. 10 years had passed since that day in the gym. Now, Deshaun stood outside the same building in a matte black Maybach. He stepped out in silence, shoes hitting the pavement like punctuation marks in a poem they'd never understood. A tailored coat hugged his shoulders, the initials DR embossed in the lining. Inside, they were holding an alumni gala. He hadn't been invited. He bought the school. The deed had been finalized 2 hours earlier. And tonight, he wasn't coming for revenge. He was coming to redefine what it meant to rise. But just before he walked through the doors, a familiar face appeared on the sidewalk. Tyreek, older, thinner, with faded tattoos and the same snake-like smile. "Yo, man, Deshaun, it you?" Tyreek asked, stepping into the streetlight. "I've been trying to reach you, bro. I heard what you've been up to. Big moves, huh?" Deshaun said nothing, just stared. A moment passed. "Listen," Tyreek added, lowering his voice. "I got a proposition. Something I think you want to hear." Deshaun tilted his head. The wolves had come back, this time wearing desperation instead of arrogance. The silence stretched until Tyreek's eyes sparkled with opportunism, the kind born from desperation, not ambition. "Let's talk," he said. Deshaun stood in the same spot where he once bled shame onto gymnasium floors. He wasn't here for this. Not for Tyreek. Not for nostalgia. But his instincts, sharpened by years of betrayal, told him one thing. Don't trust the devil just because he used to share your sandbox. Still, Deshaun nodded. 5 minutes. They walked to the alley behind the school. Tyreek leaned against a graffiti tag wall like it was still 2011. "I know I messed up back then, bro. That burner, that cop. Listen, I was trying to survive. We both were. But I got this opportunity now. A startup. Real estate-backed crypto. We just need a partner. Your name, your face, your brand." Deshaun almost laughed. "You think I made it this far just to lend my credibility to a coin scam with a high school trader?" Tyreek's face hardened. "So that's how it is, huh? All that talk about legacy and forgiveness was just PR." Deshaun stepped closer. Calm. Controlled. "My mother died because we couldn't afford insulin, Tyreek. Because we were too busy surviving while the world cheered for our extinction. So yeah, I talk about legacy. I talk about purpose. But I don't forgive snakes." He turned to leave. That's when Tyreek dropped the bomb. "You think you're clean? You think that NFT project wasn't watched? You move a lot of money, Deshaun. Too much. You pissed off some powerful people. Not everyone plays by crypto rules. Some play by blood." Deshaun paused, and in that moment, he realized this wasn't about a startup. It was a warning. Weeks later, Deshaun sat in his high-rise apartment overlooking Manhattan. Steel and glass stretched across the skyline, but inside, the air was dense with dread. An official letter lay open on his desk. Internal Revenue Service. Formal audit notification. It wasn't unexpected. He knew success came with scrutiny. But this was personal. They weren't just auditing Legacy Chain. They were freezing assets. Allegations of unlicensed security sales, tax evasion, fraud. words that carried handcuffs. He called his attorney, Savannah Pierce, a black woman with a voice like a gavel and a brain sharp enough to dissect federal codes in her sleep. "It stinks," she said, flipping through the documents. "This isn't normal protocol. Someone greenlit a fast-track investigation, and it's coming from the Southern District. That's rare and dangerous." "Political," he asked. "Or worse," she replied. "Institutional." Within days, he was served a summons. Court date, 2 weeks. But what shook him wasn't the case. It was a judge assigned, James Howarth, a man known for his strict interpretation of financial crimes. And, more importantly, a known associate of the venture capital firm that had tried to buy out Legacy Chain a year earlier. The same firm Deshaun turned down. Now they had him cornered. The courtroom smelled like oak and old money. Deshaun sat in a tailored navy suit, flanked by lawyers, staring down a jury that looked nothing like him. Not one black face. Not one from public housing. Just professionals with 401k, and country club memberships. The prosecution painted him as a crypto kingpin, a manipulator of markets. They ignored the social impact, the cultural preservation. They didn't mention how his platform funded scholarships, rebuilt community centers, or paid for funerals in forgotten zip codes. They called it financial sleight of hand. The highlight came when a surprise witness took the stand. Tyreek. He testified that Deshaun had funneled illegal funds through Legacy Chain, that he watched him do it, that they had planned it together. It was a lie, but it was powerful. Savannah cross-examined with fire, dismantled inconsistencies, exposed motive, but damage was done. The judge allowed the testimony. In the hallway afterward, Tyreek grinned. "Told you, blood money always calls for blood." Deshaun lunged. His lawyer held him back. "You're playing a dangerous game," Savannah warned. "I've been in one my whole life," Deshaun said, seething. While the case dragged on, banks pulled out, partnerships dried up. Legacy Chain's coin dropped 60% in value overnight. Holders panicked. Media outlets ran hit pieces, branding him a fraud, a cautionary tale. He had to lay off 40 employees, people who believed in him. People who needed this job the way he once needed Wi-Fi from a laundromat. He dipped into personal reserves, sold assets, delayed expansion. His penthouse? Gone. His cars? Liquidated. He moved into a modest apartment in Harlem, the echoes of his old life following him like a ghost. And yet, he still worked, still coded, still believed, because belief was all he had left, until his mother's name got dragged into it. An old welfare fraud case from when Deshaun was 12 was suddenly reopened. The narrative? That she used public funds illegally while helping Deshaun build his crypto empire. It was absurd, but it made headlines. She wasn't here to defend herself. He broke down that night, on the floor, fists clenched, teeth grinding. "Why won't they let me live?" he whispered. Then came the email. Encrypted. Issue. Subject, "You're not crazy. They set you up. Here's proof." Attached. A folder of documents, emails between Judge Howarth and executives from the VC firm. Timelines. Payments. Strategy memos. One file had Tyreek's name on it. Another showed a meeting between a judge and an IRS official 2 weeks before the audit was announced. Savannah verified it. "This could exonerate you, if we play it right." But the risks were colossal. Leaking judicial corruption? Dangerous. Publicly challenging a sitting judge? Career-ending for both of them. "Do it," Deshaun said. "If I go down, it'll be for truth, not fear." They filed an emergency motion. The response? Motion denied. Howarth refused to recuse himself. The trial would continue. Savannah's face hardened. "They don't just want you broke, Deshaun. They want you erased." Then came the knock at midnight. 2 officers, guns drawn. "Mr. Rivers, step outside. You're under arrest for obstruction of justice and witness tampering." Tyreek again. Claimed Deshaun threatened him. Showed a doctor recording. AI edited, barely passable, but enough for probable cause. Deshaun spent 48 hours in lockup. No sleep, no food, just memories of broken heating and leaking ceilings, all flooding back like the cold. He got out on bail. Barely. Savannah burned every bridge she had to make it happen. This isn't justice, she told him. This is extermination with a badge. With the trial's final week approaching, Deshaun had nothing left to lose. Legacy Chain was on the verge of collapse. Investors gone. Credibility shredded. He walked the streets of his childhood alone, invisible again, only now, not because he was broke, but because they were trying to erase the version of him they couldn't control. He sat on the steps of a boarded-up community center, phone in hand, live stream open. One button to go live. If he hit it, he could expose everything. The judge, the VC firm, the systemic rot. But doing so would ignite war. Legal, digital, financial, possibly fatal. His finger hovered. Then his phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. Don't. We know what you're about to do. And we know where Savannah lives. Deshaun froze. A black SUV turned the corner. Slow. Deliberate. He stood. His eyes narrowed. His jaw clenched. Because in that moment, he knew one thing for certain. They just made the wrong enemy. Deshaun stood at the threshold of everything he'd worked for, everything he had lost, and everything he had to regain. The text message was still on his phone, its words haunting him like a whisper in the dark. We know where Savannah lives. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. A warning. He pocketed the phone and turned to face the dark street. The SUV had slowed, its headlights washing over him like a cold wave. He didn't flinch. His mind was already working, already calculating. He was done playing the game by their rules. He had been in survival mode for too long, waiting for a break that never came. But now, the tables were about to turn. He walked toward the alley beside the community center, out of sight of the street. The SUV followed, creeping closer. As it reached the alley, he spun around, suddenly grabbing the rear door handle, yanking it open in one swift motion. The back seat was empty. The SUV was a decoy. Deshaun knew the game had changed. They were trying to flush him out. But he wasn't done yet. The weight of the moment was staggering. He was now up against something deeper, more insidious than a simple legal battle or corporate greed. Someone had played the long game on him, and it had worked for a time. But Deshaun wasn't one to back down. 2 days later, he sat in the dimly lit office of his lawyer, Savannah, who had been working around the clock. She was exhausted, but her eyes still burned with the same fire that had made her a powerhouse in the courtroom. "They've been playing us," she said, pointing at a series of documents scattered across the table. "We're missing something big." Deshaun leaned in, his eyes scanning the papers. His mind raced. He had known for days now that the case was too clean, too perfect for the opposition. They had too many resources, too many connections, and yet he still felt like he was always 2 steps behind. Savannah flipped open a confidential report from the IRS, one that had been gathered over the past few months during the investigation. The final section of the report contained a note that didn't quite add up. "I don't know what this means," she said, pointing a line in the report. "But it doesn't look like something you'd write in a normal audit. Look." Deshaun stared at the line. "Internal transaction of unreported dividends. Report ID number 54892. Unable to trace funds to official source." It didn't make sense. Unreported dividends? Funds that couldn't be traced? Deshaun's mind flashed back to his early days in the crypto world, where he learned to recognize irregularities in transactions. The blockchain was his playground. Everything was transparent. Everything was traceable. Except for this. "That's not normal," Deshaun said, leaning back his chair. "This could be a mistake. A mistake that someone's been trying to cover up." Savannah didn't miss a beat. A mistake? No. This is deliberate. This is a loophole. He could feel the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. There it was. The spark. The missing piece. Deshaun quickly scanned through the report again, his pulse quickening. The phrase "unable to trace" repeated itself like an echo in his mind. What if someone was deliberately hiding funds, using a digital blind spot to launder money, or make illegal transactions. His gut told him it was bigger than just tax evasion. This wasn't just about him. Someone had been pulling strings for years, and it went far beyond the boundaries of his case. For the next week, Deshaun and Savannah dug. They dug into the blockchain records. They traced transactions. They pulled up metadata. Every night, Deshaun scoured forums, white papers, and old blockchain codes, trying to find a missing link between the anonymous funds and the people behind them. It wasn't easy. Every trail seemed to lead to dead ends. Every lead seemed like a smokescreen. It felt like someone had deliberately tried to erase their footprints. But Deshaun wasn't backing down. He couldn't afford to. One night, after hours of searching through what felt like an ocean of data, he found it. A small, seemingly insignificant transaction buried in a sea of unrelated exchanges. A transfer of 100 Ethereum from an unregistered account to an untraceable wallet. It didn't make sense. Deshaun had seen dozens of transfers just like this one, but something about this particular transaction felt wrong. He traced the Ethereum from one wallet to another, following its digital footprint through various decentralized platforms. Then it clicked. He discovered that it had been routed through a series of complex smart contracts, ones that obscured the true destination. But beneath all this complexity, there was a breadcrumb trail, one that led back to none other than Judge James Howarth. He couldn't believe it. Howarth? The same judge who had ruled against him in every possible way? But the more Deshaun dug, the clearer the picture became. Howarth was not just a corrupt judge. He was a key player in a massive financial network that manipulated cryptocurrencies and laundered money through shell companies. It was all right there in front of him, hidden in plain sight, just waiting for someone to connect the dots. Deshaun sat back, staring at the screen. This was the breakthrough he'd been waiting for. But it was more than just a discovery of financial corruption. It was the key to his freedom. He could take this to the authorities, expose the judge and his network. But it wouldn't be that easy. He needed leverage. He needed proof that wasn't just circumstantial. He needed the one thing that could turn the entire case upside down. He needed the source code. The source code for the smart contracts Howarth and his network had been using. The contracts that allowed them to move money around without a trace. The contracts that made them untouchable. And Deshaun knew exactly where to find it. It was buried deep within the files of a tech startup that had mysteriously disappeared from public records a few years ago. A company that had provided Howarth with the very software that facilitated the illicit transactions. The company was called Ether Systems and had been bought out by a mystery buyer. Someone Deshaun knew had ties to Howarth's venture capital firm. But there was a catch. Ether Systems was owned by an offshore entity. To get the source code, he'd need to track down the servers, break into their secure vault, and retrieve it, all without alerting the authorities or the people who had been pulling the strings. It wasn't just dangerous. It was insane. But Deshaun had learned one truth during his years of struggle. When you've been backed into a corner by people who control everything, your money, your reputation, your life, the only way out is to break the system. And that's exactly what he was going to do. Deshaun's mind was already working, calculating the risks, assessing the options. He called Savannah, laid out the plan. She didn't hesitate. She was in. The next night, they boarded a flight to Luxembourg. They would be able to bypass the jurisdictional problems if they could get to the servers before anyone else did. The company's headquarters had been shuttered for years, but Deshaun had contacts, hackers, ex-corporate spies, people who had been burned by the same system. The plan was simple. Get in, get the code, get out. No one could know they were there. But as the hours passed and they neared the location of the servers, Deshaun started to feel something more dangerous creeping in. This wasn't just a heist. This was a battle. A battle that, win or lose, would change everything. As they approached the building, Deshaun's heart raced. They had a few minutes before security would start doing rounds. Savannah and Deshaun split up, each with a separate task. But just as Deshaun was about to enter the code into the terminal, something strange happened. He received a text message. "You're too late." It was from an unknown number. He looked up, his pulse spiking. Something didn't feel right. He didn't have time to think. The door to the server room clicked open, and someone stepped out from the shadows. Tyreek. Deshaun froze. Tyreek's sudden appearance in the server room was nothing short of shock, but his expression, calm, almost satisfied, was what unsettled him most. This wasn't some fluke. This wasn't a coincidence. Tyreek had been expecting him. "You've come a long way, Deshaun," Tyreek said, his voice smooth, too smooth. "I almost didn't recognize you at first. You've cleaned up well." "Cut the crap, Tyreek," Deshaun growled, stepping forward. "What are you doing here?" Tyreek smiled. "I should be asking you the same thing. But I guess you're here for the same thing I am. The truth." His smile widened. "Only, Deshaun, I've known the truth for a while now. I've known everything." Deshaun's mind was racing. The tension in the room was palpable. The source code, the key to everything he needed, was right there in front of him. But this was a twist he hadn't seen coming. How long had Tyreek been a part of this scheme? Had he always been working for them? Tyreek moved toward the server, tapping a few keys on the console with practiced ease. "You're not the only one who knows about ether systems. You're not the only one who's been looking for this." The realization hit like a freight train. Tyreek had been playing both sides. He'd worked with a corrupt judge, the same people who tried to destroy Deshaun's life. But now he was here, try to cover his own tracks. It wasn't just a vendetta against Deshaun. It was about keeping himself in the game. "You didn't think you were the only one in the know, did you?" Tyreek continued, glancing over his shoulder. "I've been waiting for you. I've been keeping my eye on you ever since you started to make waves. And now, well, now we're both in the same place, both trying to get out of this mess." Deshaun's fist clenched. "You've been playing me this whole time?" Tyreek didn't flinch. "You think I'm some kind of villain? I'm a survivor, just like you. I've always done what I needed to do to stay afloat. But you've got something they want. You've always had it. And now, I'm here to make sure you don't get it." Deshaun's heart pounded. Tyreek wasn't the mastermind. He was just a pawn. The game had always been bigger than either of them. "So what? You're gonna kill me?" Deshaun said, his voice steady. "You think you can control this?" "No," Tyreek replied, shaking his head. "I'm gonna give you a choice. You and me, we take over. Together." Deshaun stared at him, disbelief written on his face. This was Tyreek's offer. A partnership, an alliance forged in the same crooked systems that had been designed to break him. He knew the truth of what Tyreek was offering. It wasn't power. It was a prison, one of manipulation, lies, and shadows. "No deal," Deshaun said, his voice cold. "You're nothing but a puppet, and I'm not going down that road again." Tyreek's smile faltered for the first time, the facade cracking. "You think you have the moral high ground, but you're wrong. The truth is, you're going to need help if you want to take them down. They're too powerful. They'll bury you." For a moment, Deshaun considered it. Tyreek was right about one thing. Deshaun was in a dangerous position. But something in him, some instinct, some fire he'd kept hidden, told him that the only way to win was to beat them at their own game. Alone. "I've already got everything I need," Deshaun said, backing away from Tyreek. "I don't need you. I don't need anyone." Tyreek's face darkened. "You'll regret this, Deshaun. You don't know who you're messing with." Deshaun turned his back on him, heading toward the exit. "I'm not messing with anyone. I'm taking control." The first step toward redemption wasn't easy. Deshaun knew that the revelation he'd uncovered about the corrupt systems in place was just the beginning. The truth about Halworth, the judge's illicit dealings with ether systems, and the cryptocurrency laundering scheme was explosive. But the world wasn't ready for it. The legal system was broken. The media was complicit. And even if he exposed it all, who would listen? But Deshaun wasn't interested in making noise. He wanted to make change. He needed to build his own empire, brick by brick. The kind of empire that didn't rely on the flawed systems that had tried to bury him. The kind of empire that was untouchable. The secret was in the technology, the blockchain. It had always been the key. He had learned it from the ground up, and now it was time to turn it into something that couldn't be silenced. His first move was to contact old allies, people from the early days of Legacy Chain, developers, coders, security experts, those who had believed in the vision and the purpose behind his platform. It wasn't just about crypto. It was about creating a decentralized ecosystem where power wasn't controlled by a few, but shared by many. He also reached out to contacts within the underground tech community. Hackers, ethical ones, who specialize in cracking open the most secure systems. They weren't doing it for profit. They were doing it to expose corruption. Together, they began to piece together a new plan. The loophole Tariq had tried to keep for himself, Deshaun wasn't going to exploit it. He was going to fix it. He was going to create something new that no one could control. The plan was ambitious, perhaps even insane. But Deshaun was used to that by now. It took months of tireless work, of coding through the nights and sleepless days. But Deshaun and his team created something revolutionary. They built a new decentralized platform. A platform that didn't just trade in crypto. It traded in data. Personal data, secure and untraceable, owned by the individual, not the corporation. It was a direct challenge to everything that had been done to him. It was a direct challenge to the systems of power that had kept people like him down. At first, it was a small-scale operation, but the results were immediate. Users flocked to the platform. It gained traction in underground tech circles, then slowly began to grow. Word spread fast. And soon, it wasn't just hackers and tech enthusiasts using it. It was regular people, tired of the system, tired of being surveilled and controlled. Deshaun's platform, Libertech, became a sanctuary for anyone who wanted to escape the grasp of the corporate behemoths that controlled the digital world. It was an oasis in a desert of corruption, and it was growing faster than he could have ever imagined. Soon, media outlets began to take notice. It wasn't just a tech story. It was a story of redemption, of the underdog turning the tables. Deshaun became a symbol, not just of survival, but of defiance. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for everyone who had been left behind. But even as his new venture began to thrive, Deshaun knew that it wasn't enough. The real challenge lay ahead. The corrupt networks, the powerful individuals who had sought to destroy him, they wouldn't let him succeed without a fight. And already, the signs were starting to show. His platform was beginning to attract attention from powerful forces. Forces that didn't want to see him succeed. He knew that if he was going to make out of this alive, he'd have to play his cards very carefully. He needed allies, not just in the tech world, but in the political world. He needed to build connections that would protect his interests. The world wasn't going to change overnight, but with the right leverage, the right network, he could make it happen. Deshaun's next move was bold. He reached out to former influencers from his days in crypto, people who had once laughed at him, called him crazy. Now, they were looking for a way back in. They wanted to join him. And that's when Deshaun realized something. The very people who had tried to break him, his enemies, his detractors, were now the ones trying to be part of his rise. But Deshaun wasn't naive. He didn't trust them. He would use them, but only when it suited him. He was in control now, but the war wasn't over. As Deshaun prepared for the next phase of his plan, building an empire, consolidating power, and expanding his influence, something unexpected happened. A text message. It wasn't from Tariq. It wasn't from the judge. It was from someone Deshaun hadn't heard from in years. I know who you really are, and I know what you're planning. We've been watching you, Deshaun, and you've underestimated us. The message ended with an encrypted attachment, a video file. Deshaun opened it. What he saw made his blood run cold. It was footage from years ago, before Legacy Chain, before everything. A recording of a conversation he had once had with his own brother, his brother, who he thought had abandoned him, who he thought had been lost to the streets. But the truth was far more sinister. Deshaun's brother wasn't just a casualty of the system. He was part of the system. And now, he was working against Deshaun. Deshaun stared at the screen, the video playing over and over again in his mind. His brother, Malik, was sitting in a dark room with a group of men, speaking with a calm confidence that was foreign to Deshaun. His heart pounded as the words hit him like a blow. Deshaun has no idea, does he? He's out there fighting for something he doesn't understand. But we control everything. We always have. Deshaun's blood ran cold. The betrayal was deeper than anything he could have imagined. His own brother? Malik had been playing a long game, working with the very people who had tried to break him. The judge, Tyreek, the corrupt network. They weren't just enemies. They were family, and they had been using Deshawn's ambition as a tool to further their own agenda. Deshawn's hands clenched into fists. This wasn't just about business or tech. This was personal. His brother had betrayed him, and now he was a key player in the system that had stolen Deshawn's future. But Deshawn wasn't going to let Malik or anyone else win. He needed to get ahead. Fast. Deshawn knew that the video of Malik's conversation was damning, but it wasn't enough. He needed proof, real proof, to take Malik and his partners down. He had to expose the entire network, the judge, the corrupt officials, and most importantly, Malik. But how? His team had been working tirelessly, building up Libertech into something much bigger than just a decentralized platform. It was becoming a force. But Deshawn understood that in order to make real change, he needed to gain access to the heart of the operation. He needed leverage. There was one thing the corrupt network hadn't accounted for: Deshawn's deep understanding of the blockchain and his ability to read between the lines. He knew how to manipulate the system, how to uncover hidden paths in the digital world. And that's exactly what he planned to do. He sat with Savannah, his trusted lawyer, and now close ally, discussing his next move. We need to get Malik's access. We need to track the flow of money and information. If we can connect him to the bigger players, we've got them, Deshawn said, his voice low but determined. Savannah nodded. I'll get my contacts to trace his connections. We'll find a way in. But Deshawn had a plan of his own, one that didn't rely on anyone but him. He was going to play Malik's game, but on his own terms. Deshawn had a team of hackers, an underground group of experts who owed him favors from the early days of his crypto ventures. They had one goal: to infiltrate Malik's system. They had to get to his digital footprint, access his network, and follow the breadcrumbs back to the key players. For a week, Deshawn monitored every move Malik made, every transaction, every encrypted message. But Malik was good. He was no novice. He had learned how to hide his tracks. Every time Deshawn thought he had him, Malik would vanish, like a shadow in the night. But Deshawn had learned a valuable lesson in all his years of struggle. Patience was power. He waited. He watched. Finally, the breakthrough came. Malik made a single mistake, a small, seemingly insignificant transaction. A small transfer of funds from an offshore account to a registered, legitimate company. That one slip-up was all Deshawn needed. He tracked the payment, connected it to a server, and uncovered a web of companies and shell organizations. Each one connected to Malik and the corrupt network. But there was more. Hidden within the depths of these transactions was a larger operation. A powerful network of international businessmen, judges, and politicians working together to launder money, manipulate the system, and keep power in their hands. The evidence was overwhelming, and it was all linked back to Malik. The day of the showdown arrived sooner than Deshawn expected. He had been planning for months, but nothing could prepare him for the emotional weight of facing his brother. The one person who had once been his closest ally, the one who knew his darkest secrets. Deshawn had already laid the groundwork. He had traced every link in Malik's chain, every email, every call, every document. He had even gathered the testimony of those who had worked with Malik and his crew over the years. There was no denying it now. But Deshawn had one final card to play. He knew Malik's weaknesses, just as Malik had once known his. Deshawn arranged to meet Malik in an old, abandoned building, a place where they used to hang out as kids. It was the perfect location. It held memories, but it also symbolized everything they had fought for. Deshawn walked into the building, his heart heavy, but his resolve firm. Malik was already there, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. You finally came to face me, huh? Malik said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Deshawn didn't waste time. I'm not here to fight you, Malik. I'm here to end this. All of it. Malik raised an eyebrow. End it? You think you've won, don't you? You think you can expose me, take me down? You've always been so naive. Deshawn stood tall, his eyes unwavering. You've been using me, Malik. You've been using all of us. And you've been hiding behind a system of corruption for too long. But you're done. Malik chuckled darkly. You don't get it, do you? You're just a pawn in this game, Deshaun. You always have been. I gave you the tools to fight back, but you can't win. You never will. Deshaun's voice hardened. You're wrong. I've already won. And I'm going to expose you for who you really are. With that, Deshaun pulled out a tablet and played the video. The one with Malik. The one where he'd been caught speaking about how they controlled everything. How they had always controlled everything. Malik's face paled as the footage rolled, his smirk fading into a look of shock and panic. You think this is over? Malik spat, his eyes flashing with anger. You think the people who own this city, who own everything, will let you destroy it? You think they'll let you walk away with this? Deshaun remained calm. They don't control me anymore. And neither do you. Malik lunged toward Deshaun, but Deshaun was ready. He stepped aside, allowing Malik to crash into the wall, a fury in his eyes. You've been living a lie, Malik, Deshaun said, his voice quiet but firm. And I'm going to make sure the world knows it. Deshaun took the video, the evidence of Malik's betrayal, and used it to expose the entire network. With the help of his allies, he launched a massive campaign to leak the documents, the footage, and the information to the public. The timing was perfect. The world had been waiting for a scandal of this magnitude. The corrupt officials, the judges, the politicians, they were all brought to light. The media picked up the story, and soon the entire world was talking about Deshaun's rise, the truth about his brother, and the corruption that had poisoned the system for years. The fallout was immediate and intense. The public outcry was deafening. Politicians were forced to resign. Judges were arrested. Tyreek, Malik's partner in crime, was dragged into the spotlight, his empire crumbling around him. Deshaun's name became synonymous with justice. His journey from the depths of despair to this moment of triumph became a beacon of hope for the downtrodden, for those who have been ignored, for those who have been told they were nothing. But even as he stood victorious, Deshaun knew this was just the beginning. The forces that had tried to tear him down weren't gone. They were only hiding, waiting for the next opportunity. And there were still people out there who wanted him gone. As Deshaun looked out over the city from his penthouse, he received another message. This time, it wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. We know what you've done, Deshaun, but you've only scratched the surface. If you want to finish this, you'll have to come to us. Attached was a location, an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Deshaun's heart sank. He had exposed the corruption, torn apart Malik's empire. But there was still someone or something lurking in the shadows. He had been right all along. The fight wasn't over. Deshaun stood in front of the warehouse, the cold air of the night biting at his skin. The dimly lit structure loomed before him, its steel walls battered by years of neglect. A place once filled with promises and secrets, now the site of the most significant decision of his life. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was the culmination of everything he had fought for. He knew that whoever was behind his final message, whoever had summoned him here, wasn't just a rival or a role player. No, they were the heart of the system, the ones who had made it all possible, the real puppet masters. As Deshaun stepped through the cracked doors, a voice echoed through the empty space. You made it, the voice said, low and smooth. It was unmistakable. Deshaun's eyes narrowed. It was Malik. I told you it was never over, Deshaun, Malik said, stepping out of the shadows, his face hardened by years of choices Deshaun had never known. You thought exposing me would bring you peace, but you were wrong. Peace isn't what I'm after, Malik, Deshaun replied, his voice steady. I came for control. Malik chuckled bitterly. Control? You think you've taken it? You think the world's gonna kneel at your feet because you broke a few systems? You've only scratched the surface, Deshaun. You're a pawn in a game that's been going on for centuries. You can expose all the corruption you want, but in the end, we control the game. Deshaun's eyes hardened. He wasn't going to let his brother manipulate him any longer. You still don't get it, do you? It's not about the system. It's about the people. They've seen what you're capable of. They've seen the corruption. They know the truth now. People are fickle, Deshaun, Malik said, his voice growing colder. They'll cheer for you today, but tomorrow they'll forget. The system? It's eternal. Deshaun took a step forward, his resolve stronger than ever. Not anymore. I've built something they can't ignore. A system that's beyond their control. Malik laughed. A deep, hollow sound. You think you've outsmarted everyone. You think you're the hero in this story. But you're not. You're just like me, climbing a ladder that's already been built for you. Deshaun stood tall, unshaken. Maybe, but at least I'm building my own ladder now. As Malik's words echoed in the vast space, Deshaun's mind raced. His brother's arrogance had blinded him to the true power that Deshaun had uncovered. It wasn't about being the puppet or the puppet master. It was about freedom, a new kind of freedom. And then it hit him. The loophole. Deshaun had been working on his blockchain project, LibreTech, for years. But the real breakthrough wasn't just in the technology. It was in the mindset behind it. The power wasn't in the hands of a few corrupt individuals or corporations. It was in the decentralization of wealth, influence, and knowledge. Deshaun wasn't trying to control the game. He was changing it entirely. He had used the very same corruption Malik had helped perpetuate to fuel the rise of his platform. But now, he was ready to take it a step further. The secrets he had uncovered, the untraceable transfers, the hidden accounts, the manipulated systems, were all the building blocks for a new era. He wasn't just going to expose corruption. He was going to replace it. As Deshaun turned to Malik, the realization sunk in. You've been too focused on the system. But the real power isn't in the system itself. It's in the people who choose not to play by its rules. Malik's face twisted in confusion. What are you talking about? I'm talking about true decentralization, Deshaun replied, his voice filled with confidence. I'm talking about freedom from the very structures you've spent your life protecting. I've created something bigger than your network, bigger than your system. Deshaun's words echoed through the cavernous room. For the first time, Malik looked uncertain. You think you figured it out? That you're going to change everything overnight? Deshaun took a deep breath, then spoke with the weight of everything he had learned over the years. Not overnight, but I built an empire of transparency, of shared power. Every transaction is traceable, but no one person controls it. Every decision is decentralized. No one owns the data. Everyone owns the data. Deshaun could see the wheels turning in Malik's mind. He knew what was coming. What this meant for the control Malik had enjoyed for so long. Deshaun had built something that could not be contained. The fight wasn't just physical. It was ideological. Malik couldn't understand it. He had lived his life in the shadows, in the false belief that power could be hoarded and controlled. But Deshaun had seen through that. Power, real power, came from empowering others. Deshaun stepped forward, raising his voice. You think you can stop this? You think you can control a system that thrives on transparency? It's already happening. LibreTech is just the beginning. The world is waking up, and they're not going back. A silence fell over the room. Malik's eyes narrowed. You think they'll support you? The people who've been oppressed for years? They don't care about your ideals, Deshaun. They care about money, power, and survival. And that's exactly what I've been giving them. Yeah, Deshaun said, his voice calm but firm. And look where that's gotten us. People like you, like me, who get caught in this endless cycle of greed and control. But I'm different. I'm building something that lets people thrive without having to play by your rules. Malik's jaw clenched. You really think you've won? I already have, Deshaun replied, his voice filled with finality. And I'll prove it. Deshaun's new system, LibreTech, was more than just a platform. It was a movement for transparency, for decentralization, for the people. The more people flocked to it, the more the world took notice. Governments, corporations, even criminals who had once used the system to exploit the weak, started to recognize what was happening. The tide was turning. With the rise of LibreTech, Deshaun found himself at the helm of something far more significant than he had ever imagined. His wealth grew exponentially as people from around the world began to adopt the platform, using it to trade, store value, and make decisions. But it wasn't just the money, it was the influence. Deshaun was no longer just a survivor of the system. He was the architect, a new one. But his power wasn't in his bank accounts or assets. It was in the control of the narrative. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a voice for the people, a symbol of what could happen when someone refused to be broken. His influence grew. Deshaun became a sought-after speaker, his story of resilience and smart financial moves inspiring millions. His platform disrupted industries, reshaped economies, and altered the way people thought about ownership, data, and wealth. His name became synonymous with revolution, not just in tech, but in every facet of life. Deshaun was no longer just a man. He was a symbol. The bullied kid who had once been ridiculed for his ideas was now the man who changed the world. As Deshaun stood at the pinnacle of his success, looking out over the skyline of the city that had once sought to destroy him, he couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come. Every setback, every betrayal, every moment of failure had led him here. And now, he had the power to do something real, to change the world. But the journey hadn't been about the money. It hadn't been about the power, either. It had been about resilience. It had been about the unwavering belief that you are never defined by your circumstances, only by your choices. Deshaun had learned that the true path to wealth wasn't through manipulation or control. It was through the empowerment of others. It was through smart financial moves, building systems that work for everyone, not just a few. He had built his empire not by crushing others, but by lifting them up. And now it was time to give back. Deshaun's story isn't just one of success. It's a story of resilience, of refusing to be broken by the systems that were designed to keep him down. It's about the power of smart financial moves and the importance of understanding that wealth isn't just money. It's influence and impact. Deshaun's rise to power was a testament to the fact that no matter how impossible it seems, no matter how many times you're told you can't succeed, the right moves and the right mindset can change everything. His journey was about more than just proving people wrong. It was about proving himself right, about showing the world that a broke, bullied kid from the streets could become a billionaire, a leader, and a force for change. And now, it's time for you to reflect. What will you do with the challenges you face? How will you turn your setbacks into stepping stones? If Deshaun's story has inspired you, if you believe in the power of resilience, financial intelligence, and life-changing decisions, then it's time to take action. Subscribe, comment, and share your thoughts. The world is changing, and it's time for you to be a part of it.